Hi everyone, welcome to the first episode of our Solicitor Series podcast. In this series, we're going to be going through all the steps Chloe and I took to land our training contracts. So our first episode today is what to expect/do in your first year as a law student. I'm Darren Broad, a future trainee solicitor at Clyde & Co, and I studied my LPC as well as my LLB undergraduate with the University of Law. I'll hand over to my colleague Chloe to introduce herself.
Hi everybody, I'm Chloe. I'm a future trainee solicitor at Mitchell Moores, which is a regional firm in the UK, and I also did my LLB and LPC at ULaw at the Bristol campus. So yeah, today we're going to be talking to you about what you can sort of do and the steps that you can take as a first year student, thinking about becoming a solicitor and working towards getting a training contract, because that's what everybody wants. So that's where we're going to start. So one of the first things we kind of wanted to talk to you about today is the first steps you should be taking when you're a first year student.
Yeah, I think the first thing I did was actually sort of taking it back to basics, was actually decide, do I want to be a solicitor or a barrister? I thought it was just really useful to mention this point and how Chloe and I both landed on this route. So I think, and I know Chloe will agree with me, she did similar things. The things I did that really helped me decide was I visited the Crown Court and the Magistrates Court in Bristol a few times just to see what the role of a barrister was like. One of the other things I did in my first year as well was head to Lincoln's Inn, which is one of the barristers' inns, for an open day, just to see what that profession was all about. And I think through those experiences, I was really able to ascertain that perhaps actually being a solicitor was more for me. I couldn't really see myself spending all day in a courtroom, sort of on my feet. I sort of wanted a bit more client interaction. And so through all those experiences and studying at university, I then came to decide, right, the solicitor route's for me, and I went from there. But was there anything else you did, Chloe, that you wanted to add on?
No, it was very similar for me. I think it's the biggest question, isn't it? When you start at law school, you have to decide whether you want to be a solicitor, a barrister, or something completely sort of unrelated, because having a law degree opens so many doors. But yeah, solicitor and barrister are the main two options. I also applied for a mini pupillage kind of scholarship scheme because I wasn't sure at the time. But through applying for that and having those experiences, I definitely decided that solicitor was also for me, very much like Darren. My skills and my preferences for my career lent towards a solicitor. But that is one of the first things that you'll sort of be thinking about, I think, when you start as a first year student. It's one of those big questions that you have to start to sort of explore and make steps to kind of work out what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think once we both sort of landed on that, we could then, and sort of at the same time, start thinking about, okay, well, how am I now going to land myself a job as solicitor? Because it's not an easy thing to do.
No, definitely not. So I think first year is all about building your CV, getting those skills and getting those experiences which you can get on your CV. I think that's the most important thing. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think looking for those experiences, so part-time work is always advisable if, of course, you have the capacity to do so, because I know, people in my year were carers or certain other things which meant they couldn't do so. But if you do, try and find yourself a part-time role. My advice for this one is always try and find a part-time role you think you're actually going to enjoy. So I worked as a supervisor for Lush Cosmetics, selling bath bombs and soap and all that sort of stuff. And I took on that role just because I really love the company. And I think if you're going to spend sort of a Saturday a week or maybe even more going to work, you kind of want it to almost try and be a break from studying. It won't be because it's work, but if you can actually go to work and think, I'm going to enjoy this, that's my top tip for taking on a part-time role.
Yeah, I think it's also important not to put too much pressure on trying to get a legal part-time role.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of law firms, they aren't very keen to offer kind of legal work experience or legal part-time jobs to students. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to get a legal job. Any job that you get, you're going to be gaining transferable skills, which you can build your CV and you can apply to being a solicitor and being a trainee as well. So I actually worked as a waitress in a really busy restaurant, but through doing that, I used team working skills. I took on a supervisor role, so I had sort of management and communication skills. And these are all things that you can then pull out. And when you're applying to law firms, you can apply them to the job of a trainee solicitor, because whatever job you do, whether you're working in retail, in hospitality, in admin, you are building those transferable skills, and that's the most important thing. So you guys don't have to be putting too much pressure on yourself to be getting a legal job as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so a lot of legal work experience is really hard to actually get your hands on. So any role, like Chloe said, when you're writing your CV, you can say, I did this, which demonstrated this skill, which would make me a good trainee solicitor. Because trainee solicitors need communication skills and leadership and teamwork, and you can gain that from pretty much any part-time role. So yeah, don't get het up about I need work experience in a law firm, etc. You really don't, because we didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
We've managed to land our training contracts. I think the other thing then I wanted to mention in terms of sort of work experience, but this is more on the volunteering side, is if you can get involved in pro bono as a law student, or even if you're a non-law student who might want to go on to convert, you can still get involved with pro bono. It's a really good opportunity. And for any listeners that might not know what pro bono is, it's essentially a Latin term, but it means sort of legal volunteering. So this can come in many forms. So Chloe and I got involved in our first year in a project called Street Law, where we went to a local school and we gave, with a group of us, a presentation on bail applications. And then we got all the kids involved in a court case, and that was really good fun. One of the other things I did as well was I got involved with the Bristol Law Centre. So that's really close to campus here. And I was an advocate volunteer on personal independence payment appeals. So that's a type of benefit. So if claimants were denied their benefits, we'd take on their cases and we would say they were wrongly denied and hopefully get it reinstated for them. And that was a really valuable experience to get involved with some sort of legal work, just a few hours a week. I'd fit that in really flexibly around my studies. And I got involved with reading all the bundles and drafting submissions and then actually taking my client to the tribunal. So as a second year student, that was an amazing experience to get myself involved. Was there anything else?
Yeah, I think the thing for me is with pro bono is there's always different options. So don't think that, I'm really, really busy, I'm not going to have time for it. There's always lots of different options. So things like street law, like me and Darren did, that was a very one-off thing where we went into the school. We spent about a week, preparing our pitch and the activities we were going to do with the students. But you could get involved with something like that, or if you had more time to give and you wanted to build your CV more and have more of a sort of valuable experience, there are other options. So the work that Darren did with the Law Centre, as he said, that was a weekly commitment that he did over a couple of years. I actually volunteered and worked with the Woodland Trust. I was what they call a threat detector. So I would monitor I got given a county and I'd monitor the planning applications for that county and see if any of them were threatening any vulnerable and sort of trees with tree protection orders on them. And then I would write to the council and appeal against the planning applications if they were. So there's all sorts of, basically, pro bono, there's such a wide range. You can get involved with anything. And I would recommend doing it in your first year. Just if any time you have, because it's really going to build that CV, like we said, that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you are at the University of Law, we did this through the career service. So there's a career service on every single campus. But again, if you're at another university, I'm sure they can have a career service to get you involved with pro bono. But if you're not sure, just have a Google in your local area. You can Google legal advice clinic or things like that. And there'll definitely be options out there. But I think then, once we sort of thought about building skills and pro bono and jobs, the other point I sort of had noted down to mention was you can use your first year to sort of begin thinking about the areas of law you might be interested in when you then come to your second year and you might be then looking to apply to law firms. So it's a good year to sort of begin sort of feeling your way, what you might be interested in. But definitely, I think the point to mention is there's no need to sort of set yourself down to one area of law. I think in our first year, Chloe and I sort of met a lot of people and they'd be like, I want to be a criminal lawyer, I want to be this, I want to be a commercial lawyer. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think keeping an open mind is so important because there are so many areas of law and you might get to working in a law firm and change your mind.
Yeah.
So I think that's my top tip on that.
Definitely. And there's just areas of law, like law touches every aspect of life. So there's areas of law which you're not going to even thought even a thing. And then you might, get put into it when you're working in your firm and really, really love it. So definitely keeping an open mind, but starting to think about and maybe researching or talking to people about what you enjoy and how that might fit into an area of law. Because in second year, when you're going to be sort of looking at researching law firms, it's important to know what you're interested in and what's important to you as well. So that is a good thing to brush up on. But yeah, I think the next thing, which I really, really wish I'd taken advantage of, and I know Darren feels the same, which is why we were so keen to mention it to you guys, is taking advantage of first year only schemes. So a lot of big law firms, not just London-based, big law firms in the regions and mid-sized ones as well, do these schemes over the summer of your first year university, so between first and second year, which are only for first year students, and they are work experience schemes. So these are going to be so invaluable. So as we've been saying, first year is all about building up your CV, all about getting your foot in the door if you can, and this is one of the best ways, I think, that you can get your foot in the door with a law firm. So we really wish we'd kind of known about it. It's a little bit too late for us. But if you guys can do it, then do. As we've sort of said, your career service at your university or at ULaw might make you aware of these schemes. If not, it's definitely worth Googling the firms in your city and seeing what they offer, and definitely just backing yourself and applying.
Yeah, because as well as sort of formal schemes, a lot of firms will run first year open days or just first year sort of insight evenings where you can just pop along and they'll hold some sort of event where you can get to meet the lawyers. And like me and Chloe said, they're exclusively for first year students. So they're a real chance to meet the firm at the earliest stage you can. And then when it comes to second year and you're thinking maybe I want to apply to a firm where you've already got those sort of experiences in the bag, and it shows your dedication if you then do apply to that firm. So it's something me and Chloe didn't do.
So it's not necessary.
Yeah, we've landed training contracts, but it's just out there, so take advantage of it.
Definitely. Sort of following on from building your skills and building up that CV, the other really, really important thing to do in your first year is getting to grips with legal research. So when you first come to uni and you're studying law, legal research is very alien. There are two main databases that you'll use for researching, LexisNexis and Westlaw. And you'll kind of just be expected to get to grips with them and learn how to use them. And first year is the best opportunity to do this. A legal database, for our listeners that aren't aware, is kind of like a website where it holds all of the legislation, all of the cases, all of the law reports, and you can filter and search them to read them for preparation for your classes, to sort of broaden your knowledge, anything like that. But yeah, it's really something you've got to get to grips with, isn't it, Darren? It's very alien when you first come to uni. Yeah,
but absolutely. You'll find your way within a few weeks or so, and just getting to use the platforms. But you'll find you also sort of come to rely on them as you move forward in your studies, and they become so useful. But these platforms will be listed quite often as part of your reading, so it gives you a chance to get used to them in a sort of low stress environment. Did you mention that we were the reps? Or
no, go for it.
No. So Chloe and I actually, back in was it our second year or third?
Second.
Back in our second year, were the on-campus representatives for LexisNexis and Westlaw, respectively. So this is a sort of like student ambassador position, which we applied for, and it was a really great paid role. So if you are find you're struggling with legal research, you can always get in contact with either your library, but your campus might have either a LexisNexis or a Westlaw representative that you can get in contact with. And that's just a student who's been trained up, and they can run certification sessions. And that essentially takes you through the platform. You can sit a test and actually get a certificate. So that's another thing you can add onto your CV in first year that's really easy to obtain. You don't have to go through the sessions with the representative. You can just do that online.
Yeah, you can do them online. But again, it's a great qualification. And first year is kind of the prime time where you're not going to be thinking about researching and applying to law firms, it's the prime time for you guys to start working on your legal research skills, because we've used them through, undergraduate and postgraduate. They're going to be really vital for you.
Yeah.
And I think one of the last things to kind of say in your first year is really kind of focus on your studies, get stuck in with that, make sure you're sort of developing tools and techniques that work for you to stay on top of your work, and sort of exam and revision techniques as well. I think that's kind of one of the key things as well in first year, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think their first year might not count, or it's just sort of settling in, don't worry. But unfortunately for law students, if you do want to go on and apply for vacation schemes and training contracts, or again, if any barrister listeners have found their way onto this podcast for any pupillage, then your first year grades really do count, because that's all the law firms have got to go off if you're applying in your second year. So it just means you're setting yourself back a year if you sort of treat this year as sort of, I don't know, a bit more chilled or relaxed. We're not saying stress yourself out ridiculous amounts, but just give it your best. That's all anyone can ask. And just do what you can to get the best grades you can.
And also just settle in, because you come to uni, you might have moved away, you're with a whole new group of people. Use that time to build those connections, because in law especially, you never know who's going to be working at the firm across the road from you. It could be the person who you sat next to in your class. So it's really good to be networking, making those friends, because they're going to help you both on your course and in the future as well. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point about settling in. I think just in those first few weeks, just use them to work out your timetable, work out where your classrooms are, really get a feel for what the workload is like, how much reading do I have each week, and then use that to sort of build yourself a routine. I think that's so important in your first year, to try your very best not to fall behind, because I think in law especially, if you sort of find yourself falling behind a week, you're sort of taking 3-4 weeks then to catch up with that work, just because you don't have huge amounts of spare time. So just use that first year to really build that routine, like Chloe said, settle in. And I think the other point I wanted to mention as well is, if you do sort of have any extracurriculars that aren't volunteering or work, maybe, I know Chloe can probably talk about her dancing in a minute, but throughout undergraduate, I was a Royal Air Force Air Cadet, which was sort of a bit of a youth club, essentially. But I really enjoyed that. And I think a lot of people, when they go to uni, they often sort of give up on those sort of things. And they're really important to just provide a break from things that aren't law and aren't working and earning money, and just to sort of zone out. But also, they help you stand out as a candidate. I remember one of the examples given when I was at Clyde & Co on my assessment centre, one of the interviewers said that a previous candidate popped on their application form that they really enjoyed knitting as like an extracurricular hobby. But when she was asked about it in her interview, she sort of shied away. So I think don't be sort of shy away or be embarrassed about any extracurricular. If there's something you're passionate about, I really like metal detecting, which is a bit odd, but if there's something you're passionate about, just keep doing it, because it's really good to have that sort of an escape. But I'll hand over to Chloe now.
Yeah, no, I can't agree anymore. And as Darren kind of touched on, I'd been a dancer and done dancing since I was 2, and I didn't want to give up on it just because I was going to uni. And when I was applying to law firms, they often ask on application forms, which we're going to talk about in another episode, so head over and check that one out. But they often ask about what your extracurricular activities are. You kind of need to keep your hobbies going to be able to answer these questions, and to make yourself, ease the stress of, studying law, but equally to make yourself stand out and make yourself interesting. And you're going to build skills from those which are transferable, like part-time work with hobbies you do, don't you?
Yeah. 100%.
Whether it's working with people, teamwork and, leadership, things like that. So it's just so important. So whatever your hobby is, please keep doing it whilst you're at uni if you can.
Yeah, if possible. Or take up a new hobby.
Yeah, definitely. It's a prime time. Societies, take advantage of those. A great way to meet people as well. So, yeah, that's kind of our little top tip on that one.
That's brilliant. And I think that brings us quite nicely to sort of the end of this episode. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us.